The next speaker is Muraleedharan Maningal, Head of the State eGovernance Mission Team, Kerala, under the National eGovernance Division. He provides strategic direction and support on multiple central and state-level e-governance issues. He is one of the expert committee members who drafted the national-level enterprise architecture. Prior to this advisory role, he worked for over 2 decades in the corporate sector at various leadership roles. He is actively associated with professional bodies such as IEEE, AIMA, and CSI. Muraleedharan is a postgraduate in engineering from NIT Calicut and an MBA in systems. He is pursuing his research in AI. Please welcome Muraleedharan on stage.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure and privilege to be here in the ARC conference. Probably the first time I'm here with the ARC conference. This morning we had a wonderful session from eminent speakers on various topics on technology in depth and breadth, covering various industries. So probably what I'll do is I'll do a slightly different way. When you look at when the industries are working on various new innovative solutions, we need to have how we can take that into the implementation. Probably I'll try to touch upon some of those aspects from the adoption of this technology, what the government is doing it. So how we are taking some of these aspects in the implementation side. I'll try to give a broader picture about the transformation in India, and I'll drill down to some specific aspects. So when you look at the urbanization in the globe, around 50% of the globe, around 50% of the population are currently in the cities. So it's again is in a growing trend. So one of the focus for the government or for any of the government is to focus how do we create a sustainable development for all the areas. There are United Nations has come up with specific sustainable goal targets, 17 focus areas, including as the previous speaker spoke about, so including education, the poverty, the sanitation, the health. 17 focus areas has been identified. There are 169 specific targets were identified as part of the sustainable development goal. The reason was initially from 2000 to 2015, UN has come up with the Millennium Development Goal. But unfortunately, there were no specific targets. And what happened? The results were not fruitful. So there was a clear focus when we moved from the 2015 to the target what we set for 2030. The 17 specific targets were set by United Nations, and how do we achieve those goals in various sectors? So that was the focus. So one of the things is, how do you focus on the urban area, especially when it is showing the growing trend. Then we also have within India what we are doing it. We are going through a transformation. So we are at the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution, but technology is moving much much faster. When you look at the first revolution, probably it took 150 to 180 years for the steam engine to reach masses. But when it comes to the second revolution, it took about only 70 to 80 years. Okay, the third generation about the computerization, it took about 20 to 30 years, pretty much reached all over most of the masses. But what is showing is that the time taken for each of these technological transformation is reducing it. So now we are talking about IoT, now we are talking about AI, we are talking about blockchain. When we start talking about this technology, within a couple of years' time, most of the states, most of the people are using these technologies in various shapes and forms. So that is what we are talking about the time and how fast, how agility we need to have it when you adopt onto the new technology. That is one of the core focus area. So one specific aspect I'm going to talk about is the smart city initiatives. In India, we have identified 100 smart cities. So which is to develop these 100 identified smart cities to achieve the sustainable development goals in a focused specific aspects. So what is the government doing, and then what are the sectors identified as part of that? And when we are driving all this change, there's a big change. The people's expectation is also getting changed. The technology is moving, but the people's expectation is also getting changed. So how do you meet, how do you address this gap? Then what are the technological advancements happening? I'll give a specific example about the state where I'm advising on the e-governance initiatives in Kerala. Some of the initiatives, probably as like what the previous speaker said, there may be an opportunity, or there will be an opportunity for most of the people in this room to get involved or get participated in the initiatives. So these numbers, when you talk about India, does it sound familiar? Probably yes. So we are talking about, when you talk about anything about India, we are talking about the large numbers. Okay, so 1.2 billion or 1.3 billion people are we talking about. And we have over 600,000 villages in India, with around 70% of these villages are in the rural areas. Okay, any technology, when you talk about in India or within India, so we need to consider these dimensions. So for example, when you talk about the transformation of Singapore or Estonia or Dubai, so that's a different animal altogether. The population what you're talking about in Dubai is about that 3 million. The population what you're talking in India is about 1.3 billion. Okay, so the size, the sheer size of population will make the big difference when you talk about any technology and its adoption in India. And we have the wonderful scenario of the topology or the landscape. We have the varied culture, varied political scenarios, varied states and union territories in India. So we need to look at the federal structure what we have when we embark a journey on transformation in India. So that is the beauty of, and that is a challenge as well as the opportunity when you work on any of the transformational initiatives in India. So interestingly, the IT sector or the telecom sector is one of the fast growing segment in India. And we are adopting or we are leveraging this technology to the fullest extent, or we are trying to exploit this technology so wherever possible in the journey. As Mr. Prime Minister said, so the equation for the transformation, what is suggested is IT plus IT equal to IT. The India today, leveraging the India talent, so we can create the India for tomorrow. So that is what exactly we are looking at as part of this transformational journey. So the transformation has started way back, probably in early 90s, we talked about specifically about the e-governance initiatives. There were pocket or segmentalized computerization happening in various ministries or various departments. For example, in railway, they started with the computerization. Some of the departments individually started their computerization. But what the government identified a need, we need to have an integrated, cohesive manner to take this journey forward. So that resulted over years, they identified the focus programs on the e-governance, which in 2014, they brought the whole thing under one umbrella called Digital India. So with three key focus areas. One is about the digital infrastructure and digital identity. Digital infrastructure, when you talk about technology and technology adoption, so we need to talk about a strong foundation of the infrastructure. Okay, so that includes the connectivity, the internet access, the common service centers, the Akshaya or the common service centers, what we see across Kerala or across India. So in Bangalore 1, for example, or what you talk about is the access to the Wi-Fi, access to the mobile. So these all are part of the infrastructure what we need when you talk about the technological advancements. So the next aspect is the governance and systems. When we have the strong foundation, the good infrastructure in place, okay, then we need to have the systems, the services that can deliver the services required for the citizens. Okay, the services need to be delivered on demand. So the citizen should not go to an officer and stand in front of him to avail his entitlements. When I need a certificate, income certificate, I should be able to request an income certificate, and I should be able to get whenever I need. And I should be able to enable, the government should be able to enable these facilities through various medias. Could be the web channel, could be the mobile channels, or could be through the offices available near to the locality, or through the common service centers. So that means every citizen in India should have access to the services offered by the government, ease of access to the service. And also we need to leverage the various technologies such as GIS for decision support. Okay, and use of the various channels like mobile, web, CSS, all these options need to be considered when you look at the adoption of or enablement of on-demand service delivery. So when we have the infrastructure, when we have the systems in place, what is lacking is the awareness. Many of us or many of the people won't be knowing that, hey, such and such service is available through online. So how many of you know that your driving lessons you can access through DigiLocker? Probably quite a few, correct? So how many of you know that carrying the driving lessons is mandatory when you're driving it? most of, or some form and shape, right? When you ask, you have to provide that, correct? So this government is offering a secure space for each individual through DigiLocker. So they can access their certificate, driving license through the DigiLocker, so which will be accessible only to that person. So if I have a DigiLocker account, I can see my DigiLocker, through my DigiLocker, my driving license or any other certificates issued through DigiLocker. So most of the places, for example, think about a scenario when I'm applying for a governmental job. The government has my birth certificate. They have my 10th certificate, 12th certificate, degree certificate, a lot of certificates. But when I apply for a job, still I have to give the attested copies of all the certificates. Correct? It is quite ironic. We don't need to give that. I think we need to transform that. We need to change the way we are working. I think that is one of the initiatives the government is working on. Some of the states have already taken initiative and some of the things are underway. Okay. So through the adoption of effective integration across departments, adoption of exploitation of the technology available, so they are avoiding the unnecessary bureaucratic delays and overheads in the overall service delivery. So when we are talking about overall transformation, what is important is that we need to consider the transformation in execution of or implementation of the transformation in an effective manner. So one of the initiatives where I was part of that is drafting an enterprise architecture. When you talk about government, the government is a federal structure. The government of India, there will be state government, there will be a local body. Each one has its own rights, right? So we need to protect the structure what we have, the controls what we have, but we also need to give the freedom, and we also need to have meet the expectations of the citizens. So when as a citizen, I don't need to know whether I'm interacting with the local body, I'm interacting with the state body, or I'm interacting with the government of India. As a citizen, I need to get the service. Okay, so I need to have the whole of government experience when I'm talking to government. I don't need to differentiate whether it is this government or a different government. Okay, so how do we achieve that? So that is the whole of government within mind. So we drafted the India Enterprise Architecture, which is available in the public forums under STQC. Okay, wherein what we have looked at is we have an ecosystem. We talked about the brownfield and greenfield. We considered both the aspects, because when you talk about enterprise architecture, none of the government or most of the government won't be spending a lot of money in replacing their existing systems. We need to be pragmatic and practical. Okay, so we looked at that aspect. How do we transform from the existing stage to the new world, adopting the good practices, what typically we see in the corporate side. Okay, so we drafted a guideline which the states or the different departments or whichever institution they can adopt and implement. So that's been getting adopted in some of the states. Some of the states are on the verge of adopting some of these practices. For example, Andhra Pradesh has taken a lead in driving the e-Pragati initiatives. They are implementing some of this. Okay. So when we have this, for example, when you are implementing this, so what is that we need to look at that? I'm just dwelling into one of the dimensions. Government has a lot of functions, a lot of ministries, and a lot of departments, and a lot of organizations within that. Say one of the major initiative is smart city. Okay, so this is government is identified a huge amount. How do we drive the smart city initiatives across the state? We identified 100 smart cities across India, and that is being selected through a rigorous process. So the development, what is constituting a smart city? So it includes the pan city development, so which includes the smart city solutions. So we talked about in the previous presentations, we saw various solutions. It could be the power sector, but it could be the education sector, it could be the health sector, the various solutions, or sanitation, or any other segment. So these solutions, how do we provide in a seamless, integrated manner to the citizens? Okay, how do we ensure that the safety, security is one of the key aspects. How do you set up a integrated command and control center to monitor the safety and security of the aspects and operations of all these services and all the infrastructure in that smart city? Okay, and when we are looking at the smart city development, there are three aspects. One is the redevelopment of the projects. Most of the cities, so when you talk about a city, we have roughly about 50% of the population living in the cities, and wherein the land area is only 3%. Okay. And the energy consumption of the city population is roughly about 60 to 70%. Okay? And the carbon exploitation or footprint created by the city population is about 75%. This is some of the alarming signal, correct? So when you're talking about a sustainable development, so we need to look at that, how do we address or how do we look at that healthy, smart living for every citizen in the city or in the urban, rural areas. Okay. I think that is what is being considered as part of the overall city planning and development. Okay. So whatever solutions we talked about, I am sure that there will be a lot of opportunity for you to get engaged or involved with these initiatives, okay, in the governmental sector or in the agencies to provide the right best solutions which will help ourselves or our children tomorrow. Okay. So when you drive this, what the government has identified is that there are 3 or 4 rounds wherein they identified 99 cities across the state. Some of them are in the already implemented in some shape and form. So, for example, Ahmedabad or Pune, they have already established the smart cities. Probably they have not have implemented all the facilities required, but they have achieved some of the or most of the goals what they wanted to achieve. Okay, and government is planning to spend a huge amount, over 2,000 billion, so roughly about $300 billion. Okay, it's a huge money towards these smart city projects alone in the country. Okay, so that shows that it is the importance and the relevance. So what the government is doing or what is driving towards the overall sustainable development of the people in the cities. Okay, so here, some of the sectors what the government is focusing, some of them includes the major one, includes the transportation, overall city development, or it could be the energy. These are some of the major focus areas. Based on the current spend, how the money is being spent, all this information is available in the public forums. Okay, and when we are driving these various sectors, the technology is effectively being adopted to get the effective exploitation or effective monitoring of the benefit of each of this initiative. Okay, so these are the 4 or 10 thrust areas most of the smart cities are focusing on, which includes the town planning, which is a fundamental thing when Ms. Marius talked about in the morning. So they can look at the simulation, probably an opportunity. Talked about smart transportation and mobility. So many of you talked about, or many of the presenters talked about the solutions, how they can achieve that. Okay, smart water and sanitation. In fact, interestingly, Government of Kerala is working with United Nations Innovations team in driving one of the solution in this area, and smart infrastructure. Okay, and these are the focus areas, and adoption of the sensors and technologies and monitoring is one of the key area. But when it comes onto the sensors, again, we find a lot of challenges. Especially, I mean, when you're talking about the LoRa technologies, so we find a lot of challenges, especially in India, in most of the areas. So some of the sensors are coming up, but still we have a challenge there. Okay, this is, I mean, architecture which is quite familiar. I think most of the presenters talked about a similar architecture. We have a lot of sensors will be coming when you are developing a smart city or integrated solution for the smart city. Okay, and that will be taken through the technology layer in a safe, secure manner. Okay, the safety security is one of the important aspect when you are driving or delivering the architecture or designing the architecture for any solutions. So that will be rendered through the applications to the various stakeholders. Okay, so this is a broader holistic approach. The different platforms, what we saw in the morning, I will see a lot of relevance or opportunity which will help in implementing the solutions or driving these solutions effectively. Okay, and this is a broader UN sustainable goals. I'll talk about only one of the goals, which is the goal number 11. Okay, so the goal number 11 talks about which is relevant to the smart cities, which is making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. This is only one goal out of the 17. There is a lot of other goals which is again related to the smart city or urban infrastructure. This is more relevant to the smart cities. So when you want to achieve this goal, there are 10 specific targets related to this goal is been specified by the UN. So each government will be Government of India as well as each government will be defining what is the target they want to achieve that. What is it they want to achieve in that area. Okay. So that will be defining it when they are designing the smart city. Okay. And a lot of technology, especially on the IoT, AI or cognitive computing is being leveraged, and video analytics, all this stuff is being leveraged when solution is being developed in the smart city solutions. Okay. So it is interesting how the technology is moving forward, okay, and transformation is happening. But what is the expectation from the citizen or the stakeholders? Okay, so I just give a sample list of expectations, a sample list of transformational initiatives. Okay, when you talk about the expectation, I mean the expectation of the people are improving or growing day by day. Okay, so today, for example, I mean if I don't have a proper transportation facility, having a bus at a frequent interval is enough for me. But when I have a bus, probably I'll be looking at a Volvo AC bus. Okay, so that expectation will improve from from the citizen or from every stakeholder. So how do we meet the agility? Because the architecture we are planning it, we also need to think that aspects. Need to be agile, need to be continuously improving, should be able to adapt to the new technological developments. Okay, so then only we'll be able to deliver maximum value to the stakeholders. Okay, then only we'll be able to achieve the real satisfaction. For example, the Dubai government is driving the happiness index. So they define what is happiness. Okay, so they're having a ways and means to measure what you call happiness. Okay, so suppose think about a scenario. How do you want to measure the happiness in India? How easy or difficult is that going to be? Okay, so this is all about the various government side or stakeholder expectations. When you talk about in Kerala, in particular, a simple landscape of Kerala. Okay, so when I portray the landscape of Government of India, I'll not be able to fit it into probably not even in the big screen. Okay, this is a sample governmental organizations which includes the government secretariat, directorates, commissionerates, and various other organizations. This is a sample list. Each organization is a kingdom on its own. Okay, each one is an enterprise on its own. Okay. They will not talk. Most of the government organizations. Okay, and it is opening up the doors. And the interesting aspect is when you talk about the technology, when you talk about the transformation, the empowerment, the awareness, that is one of the most important aspects. So we need to make the people understand, yes, this is for you and this is going to make your life better. Convincing that the stakeholder is one of the key challenge. Okay, so then you talk about, what we have done is that in Kerala also we have identified 2 smart cities, and we have identified we are driving some of this initiative probably in a slightly different way because our landscape is slightly different compared to the other states. We are a small piece of land, okay, a beautiful land, just to market about Kerala. Okay, beautiful land, those who are interested in the tourism, and beautiful land with about 700 odd kilometers and probably about 100 kilometers stretch. Okay, and we have a good greenery forest area in the state. And what we are is we have a fiber laid across Kerala long back, but unfortunately, okay, we haven't exploited that facility. Okay, and that again, it's not scalable to the needs of today and tomorrow. Okay, so what we have done is we are identifying, we are driving one of the project to connect across the state with 48 core dark fiber, so which will be used both by the government as well as will be provided to the other providers to provide their services. Okay, so that is a K-Phone project that I talked about. So that will be done, one of the enhancing the infrastructural network in the state. Okay, so then another initiative is that public Wi-Fi. I think Government of India is also driving a lot of public Wi-Fi, and we also have identified a need improving the number of public Wi-Fi hotspots in the Kerala. And what we are doing is we are giving all the governmental service in an unlimited manner, of course through appropriate registration and monitoring, and those facilities are there. That is been getting enabled. And we have drafted we have published our IT policy last year, and it's not just about e-governance. We looked at the overall comprehensive development, which includes the electronic manufacturing, which includes the job creation and exploitation within the state. And we also looked at a lot of aspects, specifically on the skilling or upskilling in different areas. So we have created a digital advisory board with some of the eminent figures in the state. And we identified few thrust areas, which includes the blockchain, the artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, analytics, and the electric vehicles and space technologies. Because apart from the other traditional common training, these are the few specific areas we want to provide focused skill development. Because we have access to the space technology centers in Kerala, and we have, in the process of discussing with the various providers across India as well as abroad, in enhancing the electric vehicle manufacturing or electric vehicle projects within the state. Okay. And recently we have, probably some of you would have seen, Honda is trying to set up their, sorry, not Honda, Nissan is setting up their innovation center in Kerala. Okay. So that's going to be their innovation hub for their work. Okay. These are some of the results what you are seeing as part of the initiatives in line with our policy. Okay. So the another one is, we talked about India enterprise architecture in government of Kerala. So we are driving. We have, when you look at our system landscape, we have 2 data centers, we have over 450 odd applications are there. We are providing 650 odd services through different channels. But many of the services are not known to the people or not getting appropriate visibility. We are trying to bring all these services through a common government service or common mobile service, so that a single window of services through the citizen center or through the web channel or through the mobile channel will be accessible. Around 100 odd services are already been enabled through that. So that we are trying to enhance that, we are trying to add more and more services. Okay. So with that, what we are trying to achieve in Kerala is integrated, inclusive transformation towards an intelligent Kerala. Thank you. Thank you so much.